Welcome to podcast number 2 of AddVANCEO. The topic for today is business coaching. We are diving deep today into one of the most frustrating, time-consuming, and surprisingly costly errors in modern professional dialogue. If you are a leader, a manager, or really just someone trying to get a complex idea approved, you have felt the sting of this. It's that moment, when you present a carefully constructed, nuanced proposal, only to hear the counter-argument attack something completely absurd, something you never said, never implied, and certainly never intended.
It feels like strategic sabotage, doesn't it?
Okay.
But, often it's just poor communication hygiene. We're going to giving the name to this frustration today, the straw man fallacy. And this isn't just a failure of logic. I mean, it is a fundamental practical breakdown in the relationship between a speaker and a listener.
So it's happening everywhere.
Everywhere. Every meeting, every email chain, and definitely during every high-stakes negotiation where someone takes the actual solid argument, your steel man, and they replace it with this flimsy figure made of straw that's just far easier to knock down.
And the result.
The net result is that team collaboration just stalls, professional trust deteriorates, and your strategic meetings, well, they cripple performance because you spend all your energy fighting these fictional battles.
And that's what this deep dive is all about. We want to provide you with the surgical tools of business coaching that can sort of instantly inoculate your conversations against this pervasive threat. Our insights are grounded in the principles and methodologies of organizations like AddVANCEO in Brussels. They're a center recognized for high-quality practical training in communication, leadership, and well-being, and they focus on unlocking durable, human-centered performance, which, as we're about to see, is completely impossible if your foundational language is polluted by this kind of distortion.
It is. Their emphasis on structure, on ethics, and on rigorous communication skills provides the immediate and really the strategic antidote to the straw man problem.
Okay, so let's get into the anatomy of this thing. How do we spot it?
To dismantle the straw man, we first have to recognize its structure. Put simply, the straw man fallacy happens when an individual misrepresents or distorts or just grossly exaggerates an opponent's original argument.
To what end? Why do that?
To create a weaker, easier to attack caricature. They then refute this distorted version, creating the illusion of having soundly defeated the original substantive claim. It's, at its core, it's intellectual misdirection.
What's fascinating here and what I really want to dig into is that while the end result feels dishonest, the initial distortion is often born not out of malice, right? But out of cognitive shortcuts and pressure.
Yes.
I mean, in the fast-paced, high-pressure environment of the modern workplace, managers are often preempting listening. They're already forming their rebuttal based on assumed negative outcomes or, existing budget constraints.
Okay.
They hear one trigger word, say delay or investment, and their brain automatically constructs the most extreme, negative, and easily dismissible version of that proposal.
Exactly. The straw man is an efficiency mechanism for an overwhelmed or stressed mind. It allows the responder to avoid the difficult, complex cognitive work of engaging with the actual nuance of the real argument.
So it's easier to just knock down a fake argument.
Much easier. Instead, they attack the fantasy they've constructed, securing a quick, superficial win while ensuring the actual problem remains festering beneath the surface. This is why principles taught in advanced leadership programs like those emphasizing the savoir-faire, the know-how, and the savoir, the self-awareness, are so crucial.
Because without that self-awareness.
Without the self-awareness to recognize this cognitive shortcut, the leader becomes a chronic strawman builder.
Okay, let's unpack this and dive into some specific, highly relatable workplace scenarios. We are moving this out of the philosophy classroom and right into the manager's office. Let's start with one of the most common battlegrounds: resource management and strategic investment.
Okay. Consider this scenario. A mid-level leader has conducted a thorough risk assessment on the company's supply chain. They've noted its fragility and its dependence on older, less reliable infrastructure. So the proposal is careful. It's, we need to allocate an additional 15% of next year's CapEx budget into sustainable, long-term operational resources, specifically software and modular hardware, to mitigate a 40% projected financial risk from future supply chain disruptions.
Right. That is a balanced argument. It's rooted in risk management, long-term ROI. It acknowledges the cost, but justifies it with mitigated future loss. It requires, complex analysis.
Precisely. Now, let's introduce the strawman manager. This manager is under immense short-term pressure to hit quarterly profit targets.
Of course.
They view any CapEx request as a direct threat to their bonus and immediate optics. So they hear 15% additional investment and immediately skip the entire risk analysis.
And the distortion they launch back at the straw man is...
So what I hear is that they want us to shut down all our current profitable operations, immediately fire all our existing operational staff because their skills are suddenly outdated, and start from scratch with a massive, unproven, multi-million euro system that won't even deliver results for 2 years.
Wow, that escalated dramatically. The initial suggestion was about calculated incremental mitigation. The straw man is a recipe for organizational suicide.
It's designed to be instantly dismissed and to invoke immediate emotional hostility from others in the room who rely on the current operations. By attacking the fantasy of shutting down all operations, the manager avoids the difficult, genuine debate about reallocating scarce capital for long-term sustainability.
So they've won the immediate skirmish.
But they have done profound damage. They have failed the first fundamental step in the AddVANCEO methodology, the step of analyzer. You cannot analyze the context if you're listening to a fiction.
Which means your next step is flawed too.
Your subsequent actions, the AGER step, will then be fundamentally flawed because they are based on distorted input. And the real risk of a 40% future financial hit, it remains completely unaddressed.
Here's where it gets really interesting regarding the human element, I think. The manager using the straw man often feels completely justified. They feel they've successfully defended the company from an irresponsible proposal, when in reality they've just shut down a crucial risk discussion.
And this is often compounded by profile conflicts, which leadership training programs using models like Process Communication Model, or PCM, actively address.
How so?
Imagine the manager in that scenario has a highly results-driven directive profile. They prioritize speed and efficiency above all else. The employee, however, might be a highly analytical or thinker profile, prioritizing data and future accuracy.
Okay, I can see where this is going.
When the analytical profile presents a complex risk-mitigating argument that requires a perceived slowdown, that 15% CapEx discussion, the directive manager's stress response can kick in, making them prone to hearing only the immediate obstruction rather than the long-term benefit. The distortion becomes structural.
So their own profile bias builds the straw man for them without any conscious malicious intent. The training has to make them self-aware enough to recognize that internal bias.
Precisely. Let's look at another example, this one directly related to training and competency. AddVANCEO offers extensive training in areas like, say, process communication and digital upskilling. Suppose a manager proposes, we need to schedule better digital tool training for the entire team next quarter to improve remote efficiency and standardize our new CRM utilization. The intent is development, competence boosting, and optimization.
Right. The manager is trying to strengthen talents and boost competencies, which aligns with the highest goals of professional development.
But the strawman distortion, heard by some team members, particularly those who are already confident in their skills or who are highly sensitive to criticism, is something else entirely.
What do they hear?
They hear that the proposer believes all current team members are fundamentally incompetent, that everything we've done up to this point is a failure, and we must be immediately pulled off productive work for an irrelevant 2-day training.
So the suggestion of improvement is immediately twisted into an accusation of failure. That moves the conversation from professional development, a strategic organizational goal, to defensive posturing and an emotional justification of past work.
And notice the cost. The team members are no longer discussing how to standardize efficiency. They are debating whether they are good enough to be on the team. This reaction kills the spirit of continuous learning, which is central to management excellence.
And it introduces shame.
It introduces the element of shame into what should be a straightforward operational discussion. The proponent is suddenly forced to start their argument with, "No, I never meant to imply you are all incompetent." They are now defending a non-existent position. That time is just wasted.
Let's take a third, highly relevant example. Discussions around workplace flexibility and well-being. This is an area AddVANCEO explicitly addresses.
Okay. A team leader might suggest, to prevent systemic burnout and ensure long-term durable performance, we need to enforce a stricter rule against sending non-urgent communications outside of core working hours.
A reasonable suggestion. The intent is to set healthy boundaries for sustainable performance.
Right. But the strawman response, designed to invalidate the well-being initiative, comes from the hyper-competitive stakeholder, maybe the head of sales, who believes work must be 20/47.
And they retort.
They retort, So, you're saying we should effectively ban all effort after 5 p.m., immediately destroy our responsiveness to global clients, and sacrifice our competitive edge just to make sure everyone is home watching Netflix at the stroke of 5. That's institutionalized laziness, and we might as well quit the market now.
Wow. By twisting setting healthy boundaries into demanding institutionalized laziness and global failure, the genuine plea for sustainable work practices is completely invalidated.
The focus shifts entirely to defending a fictional scenario where every single project deadline is missed.
Hmm.
The leader who brought up well-being is immediately framed as the enemy of profit and global competitiveness.
So the takeaway from these examples seems clear. The straw man fallacy does two things. First, it simplifies a complex reality into a binary choice, like either we invest everything or we do nothing. And second, it avoids genuine debate by attacking a caricature the user knows is easy to defeat. It's an exercise in distraction and division, and it consumes immense amounts of time and moral capital that could have been directed toward actual problem solving. It's a failure of intellectual integrity that directly undermines organizational goals.
And the cost of that failure extends far beyond the duration of a single meeting. We have to analyze the systemic and, frankly, severe business impact it has on organizational culture. The use of a straw man isn't just a conversational faux pas. It is a fundamental rupture in the ethical foundation of a team.
Right. If the lubricant of a high-performing team is trust, the straw man is essentially pouring sand into the gears.
Precisely. Consider the immediate effects on ethical standards and trust. When a person's carefully considered ideas are intentionally or carelessly misrepresented, or worse, exaggerated into absurd, indefensible positions, it triggers an immediate and powerful emotional response.
Defensiveness?
Defensiveness, suspicion, and a sense of betrayal. The original speaker feels fundamentally unheard, disrespected, and perhaps even marginalized.
And this directly violates the core values of integrity and confidence that are essential to any high-performing coaching environment. AddVANCEO's methodology explicitly promotes l'éthique and l'intégrité as foundational values, aiming to create environments of, liberté and respect mutual. The straw man is a breach of that trust agreement.
And once that trust is breached, the environment changes permanently. If the basic assumption in the room becomes, if I share a genuinely complex or slightly risky idea, my colleague or leader will intentionally twist my words to make them sound foolish, you create a dangerous filter.
Why would anyone share a truly innovative, boundary-pushing, or even critical assessment again?
They won't. They'll retreat to sharing only the safest, most uncontroversial, and most easily approved ideas.
And this leads directly to the second major cost: the hindrance of nuanced discussion and the stagnation of innovation. The straw man replaces the deep, honest conversations necessary for transformation with hostility and these superficial, hollow wins.
We can't overstate the strategic cost of this stifled dialogue. Innovation lives in the nuance. True problem-solving requires addressing the gray areas.
But when a straw man is present, all that complex, nuanced discussion is replaced by a binary, fear-based debate.
Exactly. If you, as a leader, are fighting the fictional enemy of total project failure and bankruptcy, every time an employee suggests a minor adjustment, you never get to the real granular issue that needed addressing. Perhaps a subtle shift in client needs or an emerging technological inefficiency.
The entire team loses its ability to engage in what coaching principles call dynamic gagnant, or winning dynamics, because winning dynamics require honesty, and honesty is the first casualty of the straw man.
This phenomenon of suppressed truth is so critical in coaching that we find it specifically addressed in the source material regarding the concept of stagnation, what isn't said. The profound insight here is that in organizations, the things left unsaid are precisely the things that find les processus de transformation, that slow down the processes of change and growth.
The sources emphasize that there are often des choses qu'on ressent, mais qu'on ne dit pas, par peur de blesser, de se tromper, ou simplement de déranger. This internal filter becomes the organizational ceiling.
It becomes a cultural disease that demands silence. When a straw man is deployed, the message is clear to everyone in the room. Bringing up the real, difficult, nuanced truth will be penalized by distortion and public ridicule.
So you could have a project where everyone knows the underlying technology is flawed.
Yes, but the project manager is notorious for twisting any criticism into a declaration that they want to stop the project immediately. No one will name the real flaw. Instead, they will deal with the perceived, easy-to-manage falsehood, and the project will fail later, only more expensively.
So the company continues to optimize a flawed system because the organizational culture made it psychologically unsafe to name the flaw honestly. That is a measurable business impact, wasted budget, lost time, and ultimately a failure to reach durable success.
And this active destruction of psychological safety directly undermines the goal of developing employee autonomy and responsibility, which is central to modern leadership training. You're essentially training your team not to think critically.
They just retreat.
They retreat. They become passive executors of orders rather than proactive creative contributors. The organization loses the very critical thinking it desperately needs for adaptation.
Let's delve deeper into how this impacts delegation and autonomy. If I am a leader who frequently uses the straw man, even subconsciously, I'm signaling that I trust my team's input only if it confirms my existing worldview.
Yes, if they suggest something that challenges your authority or your budget, you'll paint it as ridiculous.
So the employee quickly learns the boundaries. Their autonomy shrinks to this very narrow path of compliance. Instead of asking, what is the best way to solve this complex problem,
They ask, what is the safest, most simple input I can give that will prevent my intentions from being distorted? This is a massive drain on human capital and intellect. Patrick Zachris, in his work on leadership, often emphasizes that true leadership is about liberating potential, libérer le potentiel. The straw man chains that potential down with fear and defensiveness.
And think about the time cost. In the previous section, we discussed that resource management scenario. How many person hours were subsequently spent defending the original reasonable proposal, having to clarify, re-explain, and soothe ruffled feathers, instead of actually debating the risk mitigation model?
Oh, the time cost is exponential. That original 5-minute discussion explodes into 2 weeks of clarification emails, defensive meetings, and internal damage control. All because one individual chose to attack a caricature rather than analyze the claim. In a world where agility is key, the straw man fallacy ensures your organization is strategically slow, bogged down by these internal fictional battles.
This realization that the true cost of distortion is measured in lost innovation and systemic mistrust makes the problem a strategic imperative, not just a soft skill issue. The stakes are incredibly high. So, if the straw man fallacy is the result of poor listening, cognitive bias, and assumption-based dialogue, then the antidote must be found in the structural rigor reinforced in business coaching and leadership training.
It has to be.
We need to move away from reactive assumption and toward a transparent, structured exchange, integrating the savoir-faire, the technical skills, with the savoir-être, the self-awareness, and ethical posture central to advanced coaching methods.
The key here is training the brain to slow down the process between hearing an idea and formulating a response. Coaching provides the discipline necessary to disrupt that automatic mental leap from nuanced suggestion to absurd caricature. And this rigor relies on 2 core, non-negotiable communication strategies.
Okay, what are they?
The first core strategy is fair restatement for confirmation. This is more than just nodding your head while the other person speaks. It's a commitment to radical, objective écoute, active listening.
So what does that look like in practice?
Leaders and team members must adopt the explicit coaching technique of pausing and restating the opposing argument in its strongest, most charitable form to confirm they have captured the real meaning before they offer any form of rebuttal.
I want to focus on that word, charitable. The charitable restatement is one that assumes good intent and intellectual integrity, even if the phrasing was poor. You are building the steelman version of their argument, not the strawman version.
Precisely. If you can restate the other person's position in a way that they immediately respond, yes, that is exactly what I meant, you have achieved accuracy, respect, and mutual understanding. The straw man is denied oxygen.
That requires immense discipline in a high-stakes environment. The impulse is always to rush to judgment. Can we run through a quick example? Let's use the work-life balance suggestion we discussed earlier, the one about stopping non-urgent emails after 6 p.m.
Okay. Scenario. Team leader suggests the 6 p.m. cutoff. Stakeholder A, the potential straw man builder, immediately feels threatened and is about to say, you're asking us to become lazy.
Right.
The manager coach intervenes, employing fair restatement. Wait, before we discuss feasibility, I want to make sure I've captured the core idea. Team leader's name, if I understand you correctly, your proposal is not about stopping work entirely, but rather about standardizing the time for non-urgent administrative communications to protect dedicated personal time, specifically because you believe this will prevent burnout and improve cognitive performance during core hours. Is that an accurate summary of your objective?
By using that restatement, the manager coach has achieved three things simultaneously. They have validated the team leader's underlying intent preventing burnout. They have clarified the scope non-urgent administrative communications, not client emergencies, and they have forced the rest of the room, including stakeholder A, to address the actual claim, which is manageable and debatable, instead of the extreme caricature of institutionalized laziness.
This creates a moment of mutual understanding that the straw man just cannot survive. The act of restating is the act of validation, confirming that the person was heard. This is a critical building block for psychological safety.
That structural rigor is exactly what distinguishes coaching from simple politeness. Now let's move to the second core strategy, asking clarifying questions, or what we can call non-assumptive questioning.
Right. As we established, the root of exaggeration and distortion in the straw man fallacy is the assumption of extreme, often negative intentions. The simple amateur response here is, we need to rethink the project timeline, and assumes they want to delay the whole thing and blame us. The manager coach must systematically avoid that assumption.
The manager coach, influenced by methods taught in certified programs, must use open, explorative questioning to uncover the nuance and the real data behind the suggestion. They have to adopt the posture base.
The posture base, or humble posture, is the philosophical foundation for this strategy. It means the leader deliberately steps down from the pedestal of assumed expertise and adopts a position of genuine curiosity. The goal is not to prove the other person wrong, but to help them articulate the full depth and justification of their thought process.
Which in turn makes their true argument clear and robust against misrepresentation. What are the telltale signs of the posture base in action?
It is the difference between closed, accusatory questions and open, explorative questions. Instead of asking, why do you always try to delay things, which is a straw man setup,
All right, that's an accusation.
the manager coach asks, what specific data or emerging risks led you to suggest we rethink the timeline? Or could you elaborate on the key variables that have shifted since we set the original schedule and how that impacts our final delivery date?
This shifts the dialogue dramatically. Instead of attacking the assumed intention, which was to delay, you are now validating the fact that the speaker has information worth sharing. You are forcing the discussion back onto the strategic facts.
And this is where the specialized tools for personality profiling like Process Communication Model, PCM, Insights Discovery, or DISC, become incredibly powerful as prevention mechanisms. These models provide the savoir-être necessary to understand your own cognitive shortcuts.
Let's spend some time on this because this depth is what separates generic communication advice from strategic coaching. How exactly do these profiling tools help dismantle the straw man?
They reveal how different personality profiles create and interpret stress and distortion. Take PCM, for example, which identifies 6 distinct personality types. Let's focus on 2 profiles that often clash: the thinker and the promoter.
Okay. The thinker values data, logic, and detailed planning, often communicating with specific linear arguments. The promoter, conversely, values action, risk, and immediate excitement, communicating with enthusiasm and big-picture ideas.
Exactly. Under non-stressful conditions, they complement each other. But imagine the thinker presents a 5-page risk analysis detailing why a new initiative must be approached cautiously and requires 2 months of internal testing.
And the promoter, who is action-oriented, is likely to hear this detailed caution as an absolute roadblock, a sign of fear and hesitation.
Precisely. The promoter's stress sequence might lead them to perceive the analysis not as due diligence, but as paralyzing analysis or unnecessary bureaucracy. And then the promoter constructs a straw man.
Which sounds like...
So you're telling us we should shelve this project indefinitely, waste our competitive advantage, and wait until every possible risk is zeroed out. That's not how bold companies operate. The straw man here is risk aversion to the point of paralysis.
The training allows the promoter leader to recognize, my own bias toward action is causing me to catastrophize the thinker's detailed analysis. I need to use restatement to capture their actual intent, which is mitigation, not paralysis.
Yes. The training provides a translation mechanism. It recognizes that the raw material of the straw man is the leader's own stress behavior being projected onto the speaker.
So it's self-awareness savoir-être as a form of conflict prevention. It makes the distortion less likely to take hold in the first place.
It moves the discussion from simple communication tactics to deep structural methodology. By rigorously applying restatement and non-assumptive questioning, the leader puts the entire engine of transformation back into gear because they are engaging with reality.
And the final critical outcome of applying these coaching tools is the restoration of psychological safety. We return to the central objective: libérer le potentiel. Ideas, even controversial ones, can now be debated constructively because the fear of distortion has been systematically dismantled.
Right. When you move from arguing against what someone might have meant to engaging with what they actually said, the focus shifts from power dynamics to problem solving. It's the difference between managing people and truly leading them.
The straw man is tempting because it offers a cheap, easy win. But this deep dive confirms that those cheap wins come at an astronomical cost to organizational health and long-term performance. The only way to achieve durability is through clear, ethical, and structurally protected dialogue.
We connect this back to the bigger picture. The message for every professional and leader is unambiguous. Ensuring accurate communication is not a passive luxury. It is the fundamental strategic imperative.
It's a bottom line issue.
It is. Preventing the straw man fallacy ensures that you are always optimizing effort, budget, and morale toward your actual business objectives, not toward fictional, exaggerated threats. Clarity is profitability.
So, the single clear takeaway for every professional listening right now is a commitment to the principle that underpins all high-level coaching, the principle of nommer ce qui se passe, naming what is happening. Before you formulate your elegant disagreement, before your counterargument even begins to form in your mind, you must pause. You must ensure that the point you are disagreeing with is the one truly being made.
Commit to the coach's pause. Commit to the charitable restatement. Your professional credibility, the trust your team places in you, and the long-term durability of your organization depend entirely on your willingness to listen for the actual nuanced claim rather than lazily attacking the easiest target.
Because that straw man is easy to knock down.
But the actual problem, once honestly and accurately named, is often the key to profound innovation and lasting competitive advantage.
So what stands out to you in your own professional life? Think about your most recent difficult team conversation. How much time, budget, and morale have you lost in the last quarter fighting a straw man argument that was never real? The true path to durable success lies in the absolute clarity and unflinching honesty of your dialogue. Start by committing to nommer ce qui se passe and watch your ability to lead and your team's ability to perform fundamentally transform.